She said, "I like the attention. What's the big deal?" And I swear to God I didn't even blink. I just looked at her, the woman I thought I'd marry someday, and said, "Then enjoy it, without me." Then I left. Not out of anger, not even heartbreak. It was something colder, sharper, like something in me finally clicked into place after months of being bent out of shape. Something inside me just stood up and walked out first. My legs followed. But let me back up. Her name's Ava. We were together for almost 3 years. The kind of relationship that started fast and heavy, all chemistry and late-night texts that turned into sleepovers and weekend trips before either of us realized we'd stopped seeing other people. She was magnetic. The kind of woman people turn to look at when she walks into a room, not just because she's gorgeous, which she is, but because she knows it. She wears it. Her confidence hums just under the surface like static. When she smiled at you, it was hard not to believe you were the only person in the world who mattered. And for a while, I really thought I was. But somewhere along the way, she started collecting attention like trophies. Not cheating, not technically, but little things. Late-night DMs from guys she used to date, long hugs with co-workers, the kind of compliments that had too much weight behind them. I'd catch her flirting and she'd laugh it off like I was being insecure. "It's harmless," she'd say. "I'm with you, aren't I?" Yeah, she was with me, but only when it was convenient. The thing is, and I'll own this, I let it slide. I let a lot slide, actually, because part of me thought that's just who she was. Charismatic, friendly. I didn't want to be the jealous boyfriend. I didn't want to be controlling. And I think she knew that. I think she counted on it. The night it broke was at her friend Marcy's birthday. It was a rooftop bar, bougie, loud, full of people Ava used to party with in college. She wore this red dress that made my brain short-circuit the second she walked out of the bedroom. I remember thinking, there's no way I'm not going home with her tonight. Turns out, I didn't. At the party, I felt like an accessory. She kept disappearing into conversations I wasn't part of. I stood by the bar nursing the same drink for an hour while she laughed and tossed her hair and let guys lean in too close. I watched one guy, tall, preppy, full of fake charm, slide his hand onto her lower back. She didn't even flinch, just smiled, leaned in and whispered something back. Later, when we were finally alone on the balcony, I asked her flat out, "Are you trying to make me look stupid?" She sipped her cocktail, didn't even look guilty, just bored. "God, can you relax? I like the attention. What's the big deal?" That was it. That was the moment. The exact second I felt my heart stop trying. Not break, not shatter. Just stop fighting to hold on. I didn't argue, didn't lecture. I just looked at her and said the truest thing I'd said in months. Then enjoy it. Without me. And I walked. She didn't follow. I don't even remember the Uber ride home. I just remember the silence. The way it wasn't heavy like I expected. It was clean. Like I'd taken off a coat I didn't realize had been soaking wet for miles. But here's the thing. No one talks about after a breakup, especially when you're the one who ended it. You still bleed. You still question everything. You still wonder if walking away meant giving up or finally standing up for yourself, especially when she starts reaching out again. And she did. 2 days later, she texted, "Did you really just walk out over nothing?" Then another, "You're being dramatic." And finally, "Fine. Be that guy." I didn't respond, but it burned. Not because I missed her, but because I hated how fast she twisted the story, how easily she painted herself as the one wronged. And that's when I realized she'd done this before. Maybe not to me, but definitely to others. Ava didn't date. She collected people. And when they stopped serving her, she rewrote the ending to make herself the victim. But not this time. This time I wasn't just going to disappear and let her wear the halo. This time, I was going to let the truth speak louder than the silence I left behind. And with a little help from someone close to her, I was going to make sure she felt what it was like to lose something she thought she could play with. This wasn't about bitterness. This was about balance. And the first piece of that balance came in the form of a message from her best friend, Lila. The morning after I walked out, I woke up expecting regret. That kind of tight panic that hits you in the chest when you realize you may have just blown up something real. But all I felt was quiet, like I'd finally stepped off a treadmill I didn't realize I was sprinting on. I didn't touch my phone for the first few hours. I brewed coffee, sat by the window, let my mind go blank. And then curiosity got the better of me. I opened my texts, half expecting an apology. Instead, I found 3 messages that told me exactly who she was. Did you really just walk out over nothing? You're being dramatic. Fine. Be that guy. No accountability, no remorse, just 3 variations of you're the problem. I didn't reply. What surprised me more than her silence was who broke it. Lila, her best friend, the girl I'd shared maybe 24 conversations with in passing. Ava's go-to +1 for everything when I couldn't make it. She texted me later that evening. Hey, I heard what happened. Just wanted to say you didn't deserve that. If you ever need to talk, I'm around. It caught me off guard. Not just the message, but the tone. Calm, clear, no drama. I didn't respond right away. I stared at it for a while, then typed back, "Appreciate that. Honestly, just trying to clear my head." "Totally get it," she replied. "If you want a distraction, I'm grabbing coffee tomorrow afternoon. No pressure, just caffeine." I hesitated. Was it weird? Would Ava find out and use it as fuel? But something in me wanted to go. Not because of Lila. Not even because of Ava. But because I needed to remind myself what it felt like to talk to someone who didn't see me as a prop. We met at this small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a tattoo shop. It was one of those places with handwritten chalkboard menus and lopsided mugs that somehow made the coffee taste better. Lila was already there when I arrived, hair in a loose braid, minimal makeup, phone face down on the table. "Hey," she said, standing to hug me. It was brief, warm, and not flirtatious. I sat across from her. "So, how much of the drama have you heard?" She gave me a crooked smile. "Enough. But I want to hear your version. The real one." So I told her. Not everything. Just the last few months. The party. The balcony. Her line. When I finished, Lila sat back. "That sounds like her. You're still friends, right?" I asked. "More like friends by history," she said, "but not by trust." That caught my attention. She continued. "Ava's always been magnetic, but that kind of pull usually comes with chaos. I've watched her cycle through people. I thought maybe you were the exception." I shrugged. So did I. There was a pause, not awkward, just thoughtful. Then Lila said, "You know, she's already spinning this, telling people you were jealous, controlling, that you hated her having male friends." I clenched my jaw. "Of course she is." "I just wanted you to know," she said, "so you're not blindsided." We talked for almost 2 hours. Nothing heavy, just honest. Lila was easy to be around, no performance, no angles. When we parted, she squeezed my arm and said, "Take care of yourself, okay?" I nodded. "Thanks, Lila, really." That night I got another text, from Ava. "I miss you. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Then I archived the thread. I wasn't ready to delete it. Not yet. But I sure as hell wasn't ready to reopen it either. What I didn't know then was that the real story wasn't about Ava. It was about what Lila would show me next. A week passed. No word from Ava. But Lila kept checking in. It started with casual messages, a meme, a podcast recommendation, a clip from a show we'd talked about. Nothing pushy, just quiet, consistent presence. The kind that sneaks past your guard before you realize you're looking forward to it. I found myself replying more quickly, sharing more, laughing more. Not at her, with her. and I started realizing how rare that felt. One night, we ended up on a long call. It started with her asking about my weekend. I was walking home from the gym. She was drinking tea on her apartment balcony. It went from small talk to memories, to philosophies on love, to bad dating stories. By the time we hung up, it was past 2 a.m. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and realized something that made my stomach twist. I hadn't thought about Ava once during that call. The next day, I told Lila I felt guilty. "Because you enjoyed talking to me?" she asked. "Because it felt like cheating. Emotionally." She didn't reply immediately. Then she said, "We're both out of it now, but if you need space, I get it." "No," I said quickly. "That's not it. I guess I didn't expect to feel anything so soon." There was silence, and then almost a whisper. "Me neither." I don't know when the tension changed. Maybe it was always there, under the surface. But by the next time we met up, dinner at a Thai place neither of us had tried, it was undeniable. The way she touched my wrist when she laughed. The way our knees brushed under the table and neither of us moved. The way her eyes lingered just a little longer every time I looked away. We didn't kiss. Not that night. But when she hugged me goodbye, her lips brushed the corner of my jaw. Intentional or not, it short-circuited my brain for the rest of the drive home. That night, Ava texted again. "Still pretending you're the victim? Funny how fast you moved on." I almost replied. Almost. But instead, I muted the thread. Let her words float into the void. 2 days later, Lila asked if she could come by. "Just to talk," she said. "But maybe off the record." She showed up in a hoodie and leggings, no makeup, hair wet from a shower. She looked soft, real, comfortable in a way Ava never did without an audience. We sat on my couch, shared a drink, and talked about everything but Ava, until Lila leaned forward and said, "There's something I need to tell you, and you might hate me for it." I felt my stomach drop. "Ava and we used to talk about you, before you started dating." She made me tell her stuff. Casual things, but looking back, I think she was profiling you, figuring out how to hook you. I stared at her. "And you told her?" "I didn't realize what she was doing. I thought it was harmless. But now I feel sick about it." She looked like she was bracing for me to kick her out. But I didn't. I took a breath, then another. "You told me the truth," I said. "That matters more now." She looked up, relief flooding her expression, and something else behind it. Gratitude. Maybe more. We didn't kiss that night either. But when she left, she paused at the door and said, "I don't want to be part of her story anymore. I want to write something better." I didn't say anything, because deep down, I hoped she meant it with me. It didn't take long for Ava to start twisting the narrative. She may have been quiet with me, but out there she was busy. I started noticing friends pulling away, replies turning colder, mutuals ghosting me entirely. The kind of shift you only notice when it starts to hurt. I finally got confirmation from someone in our old circle. They said Ava had been telling people I was insecure, possessive, even borderline controlling. That I hated her independence, tried to isolate her, and couldn't handle her being the center of attention. And they believed her. It wasn't just the usual gossip. It was curated, precise. She made it sound like I was the one who broke her down. The irony was almost laughable. She weaponized my silence like I was too ashamed to speak, when really, I just didn't want to drag things through the mud. Until now. I didn't respond publicly. That would have fed the story. But I did start collecting receipts, messages, photos, things that painted a very different picture of our time together. Not for revenge yet, for clarity, for truth, for defense, if it ever came to that. But the real turning point wasn't from my inbox. It came from Lila. We met again a few nights later. It wasn't supposed to be serious, just takeout, wine, and bad movies. But halfway through dinner, she said, "I need to show you something." She pulled out her phone, hesitated, then handed it to me. It was screenshots, a group chat. Ava and a few of her close friends, one of whom I didn't even know by name. The messages were brutal. Ava bragging about how she could get guys to do anything if she pretended to be just sweet enough. Her mocking me for being the clingy type who thinks kindness means compatibility. Her planning how to spin the breakup to gain sympathy. And then there was this. Honestly, I needed him out of the picture. That investor guy at the firm started flirting, and I wasn't about to look taken. Investor guy. Suddenly things made more sense. Ava didn't just like attention. She hunted it. She used it. She curated men for opportunity. And I was in her way. I handed the phone back to Lila, stunned. Why are you showing me this? She looked at me, serious. Because you deserve to know the truth. And because she's not going to stop unless someone stops her. I don't want to start a war, I said. Good, she replied. Then start a quiet one. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept going back over the messages, not because I doubted them, but because of how deliberate it all was. Ava had set me up to look like the villain in a movie she wrote herself, and no one was questioning it. So maybe it was time someone did. The next morning I started planning. Not revenge. Exposure. There was something strangely calm about building a case against someone who'd already set your world on fire. It wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about reclaiming the version of me she tried to erase. I started slow. I copied the screenshots Lila gave me and organized them by date. The chat logs. The flirty texts Ava sent other men while we were still together. The conversations where she openly discussed manipulating situations to benefit herself. I didn't share them. Not publicly. Not yet. But I backed them up in 3 places, including a folder that would auto-send to a trusted friend if I didn't manually check in each week, just in case Ava found out and tried to flip the script harder. Meanwhile, I let her dig her own hole. I heard through the grapevine she was getting close to the investor, the same guy she mentioned in those messages. Apparently, she was spinning herself as some kind of heartbroken but resilient type. The kind of woman who tried to love a boy who couldn't handle a strong woman. Classic. But she didn't know Lila had switched sides. Not publicly. That would have been too risky. But privately, Lila fed me more. More screenshots, voice memos, details about events Ava was planning to attend, names of people she was influencing. And slowly, a strategy began to form in my mind. I wasn't going to shout. I was going to whisper into the right ears. Lila helped me set it up. We found a networking event Ava had RSVP'd to, something with tech founders, media types, and yes, that investor. It wasn't a huge gala or anything, just an after-work mixer with overpriced cocktails and lots of egos in the room. Perfect. Lila brought me as her +1, and I didn't go to confront Ava. I went to be seen. I showed up clean-shaven, confident, well-dressed, but not flashy. I moved through the room like I belonged there. Smiled, shook hands, chatted. I could feel Ava's eyes on me from across the room. She came over eventually, acting surprised. Didn't think this was your scene. I smiled politely. It is now. She leaned in, lowered her voice. Didn't take you long to crawl back into my orbit. I tilted my head. You think this is your orbit? Then I walked away, but not before I caught the flash of uncertainty in her expression. That was the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, a few of the people Ava had been manipulating began to get curious. One of them, a mutual friend, asked me over coffee why I'd been so quiet after the breakup. I showed her a screenshot. 1. That's all it took. She stared at the message, blinking. She told me you tried to control her. I shrugged. She tells a lot of stories. Another person, someone she was hoping to partner with on a project, reached out after hearing a subtle version of my story. Not details, just the idea that Ava wasn't the helpless victim she claimed. And then came the turning point. Lila sent me a message one night. She's spiraling. Investor pulled back. 2 people canceled collabs. She thinks someone's talking. I replied, "Someone is, but no one's lying." The best part? I never had to raise my voice. I never had to expose her completely. I just let the truth breathe in quiet rooms Ava couldn't control. And for the first time since the breakup, I felt like I was finally getting even. You don't always get to choose your moment. Sometimes it chooses you. It started with a casual message from a guy I barely knew. Someone who'd been in Ava's circle, but not close enough to owe her loyalty. He said, "You might want to know she's planning to trash you on that podcast next week." Podcast? Apparently, Ava had booked a guest spot on a niche relationship podcast hosted by two girls who ate drama for breakfast. The episode theme? Escaping toxic love. And guess who she was planning to name drop without naming? It wasn't about defending myself. It was about timing. If she wanted to go public, fine. That meant I could finally move a few pieces into place without looking like I started it. Lila and I met that night to plan. We weren't vengeful, just methodical. She suggested we not react to the podcast, let Ava hang herself in front of an audience. But after, she said, we dropped just enough to change the story. I already had a small network of people who'd seen the screenshots, mutuals who now had questions. So we reached out to them quietly, casually. No drama, just clarification. One friend with a mid-sized social following posted something vague. Funny how people use empowerment as a shield for manipulation. Watch what they do, not what they post. Another posted a throwback photo from a group dinner, tagging everyone except Ava. Subtle, but deliberate. The tide was turning. Then came the podcast. I listened to it alone. It was worse than I expected. Ava painted me as needy, possessive, insecure, a man who struggled with a confident woman. She didn't say my name, but she didn't have to. Enough people knew. But it backfired. She overplayed her hand. Her tone was smug, rehearsed, inauthentic. The hosts tried to hype her up, but you could tell even they weren't buying it completely. And that was our opening. The next day, Lila messaged one of the hosts anonymously, posing as someone who had context on the situation. She didn't name herself either, just offered to share screenshots of Ava bragging about using the podcast for exposure. She literally said, "I'm going to play the victim and see what brand deals fall into my lap," Lila wrote. Within hours, the host replied, "Whoa, can you send that again?" 2 days later, the podcast episode was pulled. No apology, no statement, just gone. And that's when Ava knew something was up. She started reaching out to people, panicking. Someone was sabotaging her. She messaged me once, one long, angry paragraph that ended with, "You'll regret this." But the only thing I regretted was not walking away sooner. That weekend, Lila and I went out for drinks. It wasn't a celebration. It was a pause, a breath, a moment to acknowledge what we'd just undone. She looked at me across the table, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I think I finally am." And for the first time in months, I believed it. Lila had this smirk when she was planning something, a quiet, knowing curve of her lips like she could already see 3 moves ahead. The night she suggested we both attend Ava's charity mixer, that smirk was in full effect. "She won't expect it," Lila said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear as she sipped her wine. "She thinks you're scared to show your face. She still believes she's controlling the narrative." "And what do? Walk in holding hands?" I half joked. She shrugged. "Only if you want to. But I was thinking we let her unravel herself." The mixer was formal but not black tie. Corporate types, influencers, and a few recognizable faces from her circle. The event was hosted by the firm Ava had been courting for months, likely trying to edge her way into some PR campaign or consulting role. I wore a dark blazer and left the tie at home. Lila wore an emerald dress that made half the room stop and stare when we walked in. She didn't cling to me, but we moved together with the kind of quiet coordination that Ava had never understood. Mutual energy, not possession. We didn't seek Ava out, but of course she found us. Her eyes locked onto us from across the room, I watched the smile falter for half a second before she reassembled it and approached, champagne glass in hand, heels clicking across the marble. "Well, well," she said coolly, her eyes flicking from me to Lila and back. "Didn't realize this was open to plus ones." "Guess they lowered the standards," Lila said sweetly, not missing a beat. Ava gave a tight smile. "I see you two are getting close. Interesting. People get close when there's honesty involved," I said evenly. She tilted her head. "Careful. You sound bitter." "No bitterness," I said. "Just done pretending." Ava looked around, noticing who was watching. She lowered her voice, stepping a fraction closer. "You think you've won something? You look pathetic, clinging to my leftovers." Lila smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Funny. You treat people like trash, then act shocked when someone picks up what you threw away and sees value." Ava froze. Then someone from the firm interrupted. A woman in her 40s, clipboard in hand, politely asking Ava for a moment. As she led her away, I heard the woman say, "We just want to clarify a few things before the panel. There's been some confusion about your story." Ava stiffened. We stayed for another half hour, mingled, smiled, let people make their own assumptions. And when we left, it wasn't in a blaze of glory. It was quiet, controlled, but effective. Because by the next morning, I had 2 texts from mutuals. "Bro, what the hell is going on? She's freaking out. Just saw screenshots circling. People are talking. She might get dropped from that project." Ava had played her hand too publicly, too arrogantly, and now that the thread was unraveling, she couldn't contain it. She tried to patch the holes, but the leaks came from people who were once loyal to her, people who started seeing the pattern. Not because I exposed her, but because I stopped protecting her. It started like a slow leak, a whisper here, a DM there, and then it burst. The day after the mixer, Ava posted a long story to her socials, vague enough to avoid names, but everyone knew. The betrayals, the gaslighting, the two-faced people she once trusted. It was a last-ditch effort to reclaim her image, but this time, no one clapped. In the comments, silence. Or worse, questions. "Is this about the screenshots going around? Didn't you call him controlling in your podcast, then flirt with your investor in the same breath? You okay? This seems performative." I didn't have to say a word. People started comparing timelines. Her narrative cracked. The woman who once had everyone eating from the palm of her hand was now trying to keep the crumbs from falling through her fingers. And Lila? She stayed out of it. Completely. No likes, no comments, no petty reposts. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than any accusation. A few of Ava's former inner circle reached out to me privately. One even apologized. "I used to think you were too quiet," he said. "Now I get it. You were just waiting." No, I was healing. But I understood the confusion. To a world conditioned to believe the loudest one is right, silence looks like guilt. The final blow came from a brand she'd been circling for months, a wellness company she tagged obsessively, hoping to land a partnership. They issued a quiet statement. "We take integrity seriously. Recent events do not reflect our values. We wish her well in her future endeavors." No name, but very, very clear. Lila sent it to me with just one word. Damn. Ava went dark after that, deleted a few posts, made her account private. I didn't revel in it. I didn't screenshot her fall. I didn't dance in the ashes. Because it wasn't about watching her crumble. It was about watching myself rebuild. The truth had space to breathe now. I didn't have to defend myself anymore. The people who mattered had started to see. The rest? They never wanted to in the first place. One night, weeks later, Lila and I sat on the balcony of my apartment. No music, no drinks, just the soft hum of the city below. "Do you ever think we went too far?" I asked. She took a long breath. "No, we didn't lie. We didn't smear. We just stopped shielding her. That's not sabotage. That's survival. I nodded, because deep down, I knew she was right. Ava didn't unravel because of us. She unraveled because the version of herself she tried to sell couldn't survive the truth. Some victories don't come with a crowd. There's no applause, no dramatic turning point. Just peace. The kind that sneaks up on you in the quiet moments you didn't realize were missing. I felt it one afternoon while grocery shopping of all things. I passed the aisle where Ava and I once argued over oat milk brands and felt nothing. No bitterness, no sting, just air. That was the first time I knew I'd actually moved on. Lila and I weren't rushing anything. We'd gone slow, careful. Too many wounds between us to ignore. But the pace felt right. No games, no performances, just space and honesty. We'd established our own rhythm. A dinner once a week turned into cooking together more often. Casual walks became staying over on random weekdays. And one Sunday morning, while she made coffee barefoot in my kitchen, I looked at her and realized I didn't associate her with Ava anymore. She wasn't a rebound. She wasn't an act of defiance. She was just her. Lila. She caught me staring and smirked. What? Nothing, I said, walking up behind her, sliding my arms around her waist. Just thinking how weird it is that I almost missed this. She tilted her head back against me. You didn't miss it. You earned it. I hadn't told her yet, but one of Ava's old friends had reached out again. This time she apologized for ghosting me during the split. Said she'd believed Ava at first, but after seeing how things fell apart, she started questioning a lot. I get it, I told her. I let people paint me quiet for so long, I became easy to misinterpret. She asked if I wanted her to correct the record. I declined. Because the record didn't matter anymore. The people who believed me did so because of who I am now, not the noise Ava tried to make. At work, I got promoted. Not because I was chasing success to prove something, but because I finally had the energy to show up fully. My mind wasn't clouded with constant second-guessing or invisible battles. Even my sleep improved. No more nights staring at the ceiling wondering if I was going crazy for being the only one who saw through her. Lila and I had our first real fight around then. Nothing explosive, just human. A miscommunication about something small that spiraled for an hour. But the difference was, we talked through it. No threats, no manipulation, just raw honesty and space to cool off. When we made up, it felt real, grounded. There was no pedestal, no image to maintain, just two people trying. Ava faded out of relevance. Whatever image she tried to salvage was quietly replaced by a new face, a new narrative. I didn't follow it, didn't track it. It wasn't my story anymore. The quiet win wasn't in taking her down. It was in walking away with myself intact and building something better with someone who chose me fully. It came on a Wednesday. No warning, no fanfare, just a single message in my inbox. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I owe you an apology. It was from Ava. I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't angry, wasn't relieved, just curious. What version of herself would she be this time? The message was long, thoughtful, surprisingly free of excuses. She said she'd spent months trying to hold on to an image that was never real, that hurting people was never intentional, but it was still on her. That watching everything unravel had forced her to reckon with who she'd become. She didn't ask to come back. She didn't blame me. She just said thank you. Thank you for walking away when I wouldn't have. It took me losing your silence to hear myself clearly. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't forgive her, but because closure isn't something you owe. It's something you build for yourself. I showed Lila the message later that night. She read it quietly, then passed the phone back to me with a small nod. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. I think that was the last thing I needed. We sat in silence for a while after that, not because there was nothing left to say, but because everything that mattered was already known between us. Ava was a chapter, a lesson, a turning point. But Lila, she was the book I wanted to write. And me? I wasn't the same man who stood on that balcony months ago, watching a woman in a red dress tell me that wanting respect made me dramatic. I was someone who learned the hard way that the quietest goodbyes often lead to the loudest healing. And in the end, that was the real revenge. I didn't just move on, I leveled up.